Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for today's Digital Dealer webinar. Today's webinar is sponsored by AdTaxi and is titled Digital Strategies for Auto Marketing Success in 2022. Our presenters today are Lindsy O'Connor, AdTaxi's Senior Digital Sales Director, and Sheri Cosgrove, AdTaxi's Product Marketing Manager. This webinar will run for about 1 hour, including a question and answer session at the end. So be sure to use the Q&A panel to enter your questions for our speakers throughout the event. And now, please welcome our presenters, Lindsy and Sheri.
Well, thank you, Skylar, and good afternoon to everybody. Thank you for joining us today. We're very excited to be here and to be partnering with Digital Dealer and have the opportunity to connect with you all today. So Skylar did a little introduction already, but I'll just tell you a little bit about our organization. AdTaxi is an agency that offers a full spectrum of services to promote businesses in the digital space. We're known for our team of digital marketing experts, and we specialize in solving complex marketing challenges with simple and effective solutions. So I'm going to move into a little introduction of each of us again. Skylar mentioned I'm Sheri Cosgrove. I'm the product marketing manager here at AdTaxi. And some of you may have noticed when you registered for this webinar that my presenting partner was going to be Thad Klaba, the senior account executive here, but his family and he are all dealing with a bout of COVID, and he is not able to join us today. So luckily we were able to have our senior sales director, Lindsy O'Connor, step in his place. So she's here today to help us out with our presentation. So on the agenda for today, we are going to start out talking about current trends, the current climate, what's happening in the automotive market right now. Then we'll move on to examine some tactics that are effective for dealing with those trends. We'll talk about ways that you can maximize your performance and make sure that you're getting a good return on your investment. And then we'll end with a question and answer period so that you can kind of ask us for more information, and we can be happy to give you our best advice. So to get started, we're going to talk about current trends in the automotive market. It's really important when you're building a marketing strategy to really begin by evaluating the current situation. You want to take into account what your colleagues and competitors are doing. You want to see what the current trends are so that when you choose your tactics and you build out your marketing plan and your strategy, you'll be certain that you're going to get a good return on all that time and effort. So I'm going to start by looking at kind of 3 really big key trends that are happening right now. And all of us, I'm sure, wish we weren't talking about this one anymore, but the reality is that COVID is just sticking around, and we've all had to make a lot of really continuous adjustments to the conditions that are being caused by the pandemic, and they just are kind of in constantly changing. So the second trend that we'll take a look at is the increased focus on digital transactions, from searching for vehicles to interacting with sales representatives, paperwork processing. More and more, the clear trend is moving towards digital transactions. And then finally, supply interruptions. These have impacted really every part of the vehicle buying process. So they really are something to keep in mind when you're doing your planning. So we'll start by taking a little closer look at the impact of COVID-19 on the vehicle market. Really seeing major shifts in consumer demands and buying habits, especially in the market for autos. One of the clear impacts has been to speed up the adoption of digital technologies. That's kind of been happening across the board in all industries, and things were really moving that way before the pandemic, but everything has sort of moved into a digital marketplace. Work from home and meetings like what we're doing today, all of these things have really moved into a digital environment now at a much faster pace than what was happening before. And it's really created much faster adoption and comfortability with those technologies. People are just much more comfortable doing those transactions digitally. A recent study shows that more than 3/4 of vehicle shoppers are open to a fully online process. So that's really a big swing in adoption of doing this online entirely. Another impact of COVID has been increased concern about health and safety. On a global level, everyone is just much more aware of their surroundings. They have much higher expectations about cleanliness and procedures, ensuring a safe environment. It's just really become very top of mind, and people were, I'm sure, always somewhat aware, but now it's really very prevalent in everybody's thinking. Nearly half of consumers who were surveyed were highly concerned about COVID-19. So, and the current Omicron outbreak is really driving those numbers up even higher. It's just becoming, more and more something that people really do think about quite a lot. And then finally, another impact of the COVID pandemic has been impacting access to public transportation and ride sharing options, things like Uber or Lyft, and then changing attitudes about the health and safety of using those options. There's impacts to, when you're talking about public transportation, you're in an enclosed space, people are considering, do I really want to put myself in that environment? And then there are also impacts to drivers and the people who are running the system of public transportation, because there are worker shortages and there are situations where people are out due to COVID. And so those schedules have become a little bit more unstable as a result of that. And as the workforce is transitioning more to a work from home environment, there's been kind of a migration to somewhat more remote areas for some people, where then public transportation or even Lyft or like Uber ride sharing types of things just aren't as much of an option for them. So a personal vehicle has become more important to people who are in that kind of a situation as well. More than 1 in 4 vehicle shoppers are saying that part of the reason they're buying is that they no longer want to use other forms of transportation. So that's definitely impacting demand. So some of the things that are impacting the market, in addition to COVID, are a transition to a digital approach. Like we had talked about, many people are just moving to a process, almost always starting online. And more often than not, they're interested in options to view selections using things like VR or digital listings, or asking for things like at-home test drives or other remote opportunities when they're making their buying decisions. So that buying process has really moved to primarily a digital process. Financing and sales documents and all of those things, at-home delivery, those are highly sought after. Another major trend is that people are looking, like I said, they're looking for options to do their test drives at home, if it's possible, or for there to be a streamlined process where maybe it's a little bit more of a flexible scheduling scenario. Just having that as an option is really people are really looking for that. Move on here to the next. So the final key trend for our discussion today is the effect of supply interruptions. So from manufacturing slowdowns to ongoing chip shortages, pardon me, and supply chain interruptions. All of these things are really affecting the automotive market. There's been periodic shutdowns that have created slowdowns in vehicle production. The availability of just new cars and trucks has really been impacted by these things. And then even getting parts either to manufacturers or vehicles to dealers has also been disrupted by the shortage of drivers and all the other things that are impacting the supply chain. So all of these trends are good things to be aware of as you're moving into your planning for how to strategize your marketing for 2022. So what does this mean for dealers? Well, the overall effect of all of these trends has really been that there's an increased demand for new and used vehicles and record high prices. Most recent figures are showing prices up as much as like 34%. The increased expectation for a smooth digital process for shopping and buying vehicles means digital adaptations are increasingly critical. And finally, the decreased supply of new vehicles has also created a much higher demand for used vehicles than ever before. The bottom line is really that it's important to be aware of the current marketplace trends, as well as what's happening with your colleagues and your competitors, so that you can make sure that your strategy addresses each of those issues and you're able to create a plan that will work. Which brings us into a discussion about some tactics that you can use to address these current trends and really help you build a successful marketing strategy. First strategy I want to talk about is surrounding health and safety. That's really in response to what's been happening with the COVID pandemic. All of those things are definitely having an impact. So what can you do about that? What are your tactics that you can put into place to deal with that particular trend? I'm sure that everybody really have routines in place to ensure clean and safe spaces for your customers when they're visiting you in person. It's also really important to consider that in your marketing material. Health and safety are at the forefront of nearly everyone's thinking right now. And so you can reassure them by making sure that that messaging is included in your marketing, that people can see that very clearly. Even if you're doing it, if you're not promoting it or making sure that people are aware of it, they might not be as comfortable or as aware of what is happening. So you can do clear signage, cleaning that's happening visibly within your environment so people can really see that. And then communicating your clear guidelines about things like social distancing or what your current masking conditions are, because they change so frequently. So you make sure that part of your marketing strategy includes communicating publicly about what people can expect when they come in person, what the masking requirements might be, what your cleaning processes are, what your social distancing requirements are, and how you're cleaning your vehicles and making sure that they're safe. That'll just really help build a trust with those customers. And it's just a nice way to make sure that you migrate those from your physical location, so it's all clear if you are on site, into your marketing materials. So they can see that before they even arrive, if they're going to be coming in person. And so the next tactic I'm going to talk about is streamlining the sales and the buying process. As much as possible, you want to try to streamline that process for people. Consumers have really become a lot less patient. They're more demanding in their transactions. They want them to be simplified. They want them to be frictionless. They want to try to do as much as they can online or in advance. If you can provide things like immersive online tours that can allow your viewer to see all the details about their vehicle that they're interested in. And if you don't have the VR option, just to make sure that your BDP pages have as much detail as possible, so that when someone is interested, they can really find out all that they might want to know without needing to come in necessarily, or that they can find out and compare what they're looking at to other things, and if all of those information points are available to them. And that usually is part of your dealership CRM tool. So you can collect information from your inventory feed, make sure that you fill out everything that you can possibly provide for people so that they can see all those details right up front. Offer multiple communication options. You can really increase your reach. You can increase your engagement with your potential customers when you establish good communication with them. And there's a lot of tools that are often available. You can use all the tools you have. That might be email communication, that might be through your website, that might be social media. Chat integration is also a really big thing, so that people can talk to someone through a chat one-on-one and get that information, feel that connection, and build some of a relationship with that buyer so that they have a trust in what they're seeing from you and want to then come in and complete that transaction. You can also do some tools where you integrate chat, maybe direct messaging through your social platforms. It kind of depends on how much staffing you have or what resources are available to you. You can always get someone to manage that for you if you don't have the manpower to do it, and then they can pass that along to you or feed it right into your CRM so that you can follow up with those potential customers. Online signing, if that's something that you're able to transition into for your paperwork, that is a really sought after tool too. People want to be able to complete their whole process online if it's possible. If that's not possible, then there's always options for doing that paperwork remotely in advance, and then having it printed, having it ready, having it so that your meeting in the dealership when you're finalizing that buying process is just very quick. Papers all ready, tabs where you need to sign, getting that all done so that you can really make that as seamless as possible. That's something that people really are looking for. And then to take that to the next step, incorporate that into your marketing messaging so that when you have those online options that are completely digital, then make sure that that is part of the messaging that you're getting out in your marketing. And if you don't, then you can say that you'll streamline that process right up to whatever point you are able to execute on, but just letting people know what they can expect and that you are going to be as responsive and make that process as seamless as possible as part of your messaging to your potential customers. So highlighting in-person and digital options. Said it already a little bit, but just can't say it enough. Shopping from home really is where people are getting started. And hybrid interactions have really become the norm. Having options for both in-person and online transactions is really now kind of the standard expectation in the automotive world. Fully populated with all the details, but then also to make sure that consumers know that if your dealership is open and they can come in person, that that's an option, because there are definitely people who would like to have that as an opportunity. And so if you're able to provide both that hybrid experience, that's something that you can really promote too, so that you're kind of catching both of those sides of the equation for the people who want that fully digital experience, but then also the people who would like to be able to come in. So if that's an option for you, and I know that that changes a lot due to whatever the circumstances are with the pandemic, but if you have that option, that's a really good thing to let people know. At-home test drives being in demand. So again, if it's possible to do that, that's great. And people really would like to know that that's an option. So include that in your messaging if it is an option. Say you have both on site or at home. And I know that very many people have like a fluctuating schedule right now. Kids are in school and then they're not in school, or working from home and they're not working from home. So if there are ways to maybe provide extended hours or flexible scheduling for those things, all of those are really appreciated by people who are working through all of this unknown with the current situation. So use that as your messaging. Make sure that that gets out to the people who are interested, so they know what their options are. And then delivery options. If you are able to find a way to make a delivery, an at-home delivery, an option for people, that really will open doors for those who are either unable or uncomfortable with coming in person to take delivery. But if you're not able to do that, then there's other ways that you can still make that process maybe a little smoother for people. So consider things like doing, when you do a vehicle walkthrough for a new car buyer, when you show them all around the car, that would be something you could maybe do as a short video that you could send in advance. So rather than spending the time at the dealership in the car with the salesperson doing that walkthrough, you could do that either remotely through a remote meeting or through a little video. That would be something that you could integrate into your process that would help people know that they have those different options that will fit whatever their changing schedule might be. And just letting people know that through your marketing, again, like putting it on your website, getting it on your marketing, putting it on your social platforms so that it's clear and available to everyone. Really, communication is key there, because you can put a lot of these things in place, but you need to then make sure that people understand that those are options for them. Otherwise, then it just really doesn't. That's a good way to make you stand out in a crowded market. There's a lot of people clamoring for the business, and if you can stand out by making sure people know what your options are, that's a good way to gain some traction. So managing digital inventory feeds, especially with the market shift towards used cars, it's critically important to keep your inventory information up to date. Your inventory feed is your connection to buyers, and your vehicle detail pages are your first impression. When someone sees a vehicle they might be interested in, that you're selling, if they can't see it, you can't sell it. And a buyer might be just getting started in their journey. They might be just starting out searching for a few things. And if they're not seeing new options coming through in your feed, or they're not seeing changes to what you're offering, that could even create a negative perception or a thought that you really don't have very much to choose from, and they might move on. So it's really important to keep that as up to date as possible. How do you make sure that your inventory is current? Use your tools, use the dealership tools that you have that have an inventory tool. Most of them have a digital feed available, and that's usually what is feeding your listings on your website. But you can also integrate with other platforms, other distribution points to get that vehicle information out. You can put those feeds out through different tools. They can be put into Google, they can be put into Facebook, they can be put into other marketplaces where vehicles are being listed. So utilize that feed and make sure that you're kind of finding ways to connect to those other sources, so you can get people who are out searching for what you might have available. And that brings me to I was kind of talking about that already, but yeah, use multiple distribution channels. Make sure that you are getting in front. A lot of people who are shopping for a vehicle, they're not doing that all the time. They're in lots of other places, but they're spending a lot of their time online. So if you can get, do some digital ads that get in front of those people when they're other places, when they're not really shopping for a car, but maybe they might just catch that you might catch their eye while they're doing something else. And that's, again, one of the reasons why it's good to get your vehicle feed integrated into something like Facebook, where they might be doing something totally unrelated to car buying, but then if their news feed brings up a listing that they might be interested in, you'll have a much better chance of getting that person to come in and potentially buy that vehicle. Next, I'm going to talk just a little briefly about the high value for trade-ins. Everyone has been seeing this. The prices are just increasing. The units being sold are down. Gross margins and profits are up, and demand for used cars is just continuing to go up, and it's projected to continue to go up even into this coming year. So this has resulted in sellers taking advantage of the high value of their used vehicles, which really creates an opportunity for dealerships who are seeking to boost their inventory by offering a good value on trade-ins. So since you're dealing with a limited inventory situation, that's really expected to continue into this year. A great way to make sure that you have a constant source of new inventory is to make that trade-in process as appealing as you can to shoppers. Offer ways to get trade-in values really easily online. If you can get that where you can become a Kelley Blue Book buying center and be able to provide instant offers right on your website for trade-ins or used vehicles. That's something that we've seen a lot of movement towards, because people really do want to just, what is my car going to trade in at? And if you can make that appealing to people, then they will oftentimes use that as the starting point to make their decision as to whether or not they're going to move ahead with you. You can also offer incentives for trade-ins. You can encourage sellers to work with your dealership by maybe offering free oil changes or another add-on feature, because really everybody is offering a pretty good value for trade-ins right now. So if there's a way that you can find to just kind of sweeten that deal in a way that will catch people's attention, and then use that as one of your marketing tactics to show people that, yes, we'll give you a good value for your trade-in. We'll help you trade up to a newer, nicer vehicle perhaps, but we'll also give you a year of free oil changes or whatever an offer that might be, something that will work for your dealership. Because really more than half of consumers have switched from a plan to buy a new vehicle to a plan for buying a used vehicle. So the demand really is definitely there. So right now, while inventory is a challenge, it is a good time to focus on other ways of bringing in customers. Many vehicle owners are electing to repair or upgrade their existing vehicles. Purchasing options are limited, so they might just decide to not purchase new yet, but they want to maintain their existing vehicle. It's a good time to use a strategy to connect with someone who is just looking to a place to get either repair or maybe an upgrade or something to keep their vehicle longer. And if you can establish a relationship with a new customer that way, then when they are ready to move into the buying market, then you're going to have that established relationship. They're going to have that level of trust, and they're going to more often choose to start their buying decisions with you. There's also a lot of opportunity to reach out to your existing customers, people who've already purchased vehicles from you in the past. You have a lot of information on them in your CRM typically, so that you know when they might be due for services or what kinds of things might appeal to them based on what vehicle they own right now. And you already have a relationship with that customer, so they're much more likely to come back if you keep that connection active by communicating with them, presenting offers or add-ons that might bring them in for service or repair. Just kind of keeping your dealership top of mind for them until they're ready to do that purchase, which might be happening at some point in the future. So even while inventory is maybe low or people aren't thinking as much about doing marketing of car sales, there's an opportunity for sure to just maintain those relationships by doing promotions for other things right now. And finally, just going to touch briefly on electric vehicles. That's a trend that everyone is kind of hearing more and more about. There's been a clear rise in the interest in EVs. Over here, the chart kind of shows, if you look from like 2017 until now, there's a clear increase, and it just kind of keeps going up. And really almost all of the major manufacturers are introducing EVs. And so it just does appear to be the way that things are headed. So if you are a dealership that has access to new EVs, it makes sense to do a marketing strategy around promoting that fact, or promoting pre-ordering. I know pre-ordering is filling up really quickly. So maybe that isn't exactly a tactic to use just yet, but it is something to plan for, because that's just going to continue to grow. The demand is there and growing. If you have access to used EVs, that's another great point to bring up when you're doing your marketing strategy. It is something that a lot of people are looking for. And even if you maybe don't have inventory at the moment, but if you are working to build that inventory, you can incorporate that messaging into your marketing and just kind of keep, again, that awareness in buyers, so that when they are ready to shop electric, they'll be thinking about your dealership. Which brings us then to strategies for maximizing the return on your investment. I'm going to turn it over here to Lindsy, and she'll take it from here.
Awesome. Thanks, Sheri. Hi, everybody. And thanks for letting me fill in for Thad. Don't worry, I've been in digital for a very long time, dealt with automotive a long, long time. So I can definitely fill some shoes. But really quick, I mean, obviously, I would assume most of you are doing digital marketing to some capacity. And, what Sheri did a really good job, I think, illustrating is that Yes, you're doing digital marketing, right? You are doing things already that are kind of out there and top of mind. But I think it's really switching your messaging and some of these like little tactical things that you can do that's going to help you stand out in this new environment. So the first thing we're going to talk about is brand awareness. So dealerships, I know specifically, are so good at it, right? You guys are so strong in TV and just getting your name out there and establishing the brand within your local marketplace, which is fantastic. But as Sheri had brought up, people are shifting the way that they're operating, and they're much more willing to travel and look outside of maybe that local dealer that they were loyal to. So from a marketing standpoint, you kind of want to put that in perspective that, okay, yes, you want to brand to your primary market, but think about expanding that footprint and going outside of that traditional geography and taking it a few steps further. This is going to allow you to reach potential new buyers. It's going to tap into a new market that maybe you weren't necessarily focused on so much before. And the important thing is to be consistent and make sure that you're staying in front of them, not just every once in a while when you think you have a hot deal to spend, is really having that consistency in front of them so that they do become more top of mind. Some platforms that are really, really good and hot right now are connected TV and audio. So audio in the programmatic standpoint. So I know recently we've seen a lot of our dealerships move in this direction, or add this, I should say, to their current strategy. So connected TV provides the ability to brand yourself, message whatever incentives or new things you have going on to the biggest screen in the house. But it applies the cool things that we know programmatic has to offer with their targeting, which I'm going to get into in a little bit. And then audio, streaming through like Spotify, Pandora, all of those. Audio has a lot of unique abilities as well. It's a really cool, engaging form to be messaging on. And again, it applies with all of that cool programmatic targeting. So if we go into the messaging piece, so again, I think Sheri did a really good job of kind of setting up some of the things that we need to focus on and kind of shift gears, right? Yes, they want to know about your car. Yes, they want to know you've been around for X amount of years. All of that is great, but I think pointing out and speaking to the current state that we know our consumers are in is going to be really important. So if you have pre-ordering as an option, talk about it. And it can sound exciting. It can sound fun, like be the first to get this new car or whatever it is. You can put it in a way that makes it sound really fun. Customizing. So that could be something also that now you have the opportunity to really build that car of your dream. Let us help you and we'll get it to you as fast as possible. And then all of that obviously from the ease of your own home. So again, messaging is going to be really important in how you convey what people are looking for. And you know what, they are, as Sheri pointed out, more likely to do things online and make these purchases online. So make sure that you get the luxury of pairing your local dealership or a little bit more well-known established dealership with that same ability that people are moving towards. So kind of pairing that together in your messaging is going to be nice. So, pair back on the test drives, obviously. Some people are into it or not, but kind of maybe not have that be the focus. And then obviously incentives are going to be key. We know pricing might not be the best unless you have some really good trade-in deals. I know that sparked my husband and I to drive 2.5 hours through DC traffic to get a new car. So incentives are good, they work. So just make sure that you're really putting that out there and being strategic. So again, Sheri said it, communication is key. Yes, you might have these things, but are you communicating it to your current clients or past purchasers, as well as to new people and new markets from a geography standpoint? So if we look at the path to purchase, I touched on this pretty strongly, but again, buyers will travel, they will go. So make sure that you are increasing your geography, but doing it in a strategic way. So you want to prioritize, yes, your primary market and that normal geo that you would really focus and hone in on, but go a little bit outside of that and shift budget accordingly. and give it the time. So I'm going to talk about looking at ROI and how to kind of maximize and measure, but making sure that you're giving yourself enough time to saturate that new geography and that new market a little bit stronger than maybe you had in the past. Also thinking about the decrease in brand loyalty. So on the flip side of this, because people are willing to travel, that's cool. That brings you maybe new buyers that wouldn't have come before, but it also might mean that some of those people who are really strong with you are willing to travel. So it goes back to that CRM list. How are you speaking to past purchasers? How are you communicating with those that were in your wheelhouse for so long? Making sure that you're treating them with VIP status or giving them access to things before anyone else is going to, I think, help create that brand loyalty and help them kind of stay with you. So omnichannel, always the hot word for the last few years, but it's really, really important. So making sure that it goes back to communication. They're getting all of this great messaging and all of this information out there across all these different channels, because people are online quite a bit more than ever, and they aren't just in one spot. They're not just streaming TV on connected TV. They're not just reading articles online. They're doing a bunch of different things. And so making sure that your messaging is in front of those people very consistently across channels is going to be important. And also making sure that you have that cross-device tracking set up, so once we do kind of find the ideal audience, that you're matching them and finding them across all of these different channels. Sorry, I just wanted to say one other thing there. So with the different platforms, I know in the past some of the dealerships that we have worked with, might shift dollars. So maybe they're doing some display and search. And then instead of just trying social, they shift display to social, or they'll shift display to connected TV. I would really encourage you right now to try to prioritize your budget, but spend it across a bunch of these different channels and give it some time to test and see, because again, that increase in digital exposure is really, it's grown. That's where everyone is. And so I think now's the time to tap into that as much as possible, especially with the way the market is, right? It's really critical for you to gain as much market share as possible. Thanks, Sheri, I'm sorry. And then data. So first party data is like your liquid gold. You just want to make sure that you're tapping into that as much as possible. So getting that brand loyalty up by getting them to come to you and your dealership, as well as stick with the brand that you offer. Utilizing CRM for service pieces, right? So maybe, you don't have a ton of inventory right now, or your used car game isn't where it needs to be quite yet. What can you do on the service side? How can you get these people staying engaged with you so that when your inventory does shift, they're already engaged with you to some capacity. So just thinking about how to smartly use that. And I think Sheri also illustrated really nicely that you can use CRM and pipe it into some of those channels that I just reviewed with you guys. So you can be really, really smart and strategic with that list. Retargeting is always very important in any strategy. That's where I know we've seen a ton of conversions come from. But it's also important to note that retargeting, you can't just start putting all your eggs in the retargeting basket because of that success. It's kind of it's building, right? You need to make sure that we're prospecting really, really smartly and getting more people in your funnel that you can retarget to. So if you just dump everybody into retargeting, you're going to stop having people up here to retarget to, right? So you want to constantly have that really smart pipeline. And by getting a pipeline together, reaching out to custom audiences is a really smart way. So I mentioned about programmatic. We have some amazing opportunities with third-party data to tap into Experian. So we can see, okay, who's in the market right now for looking for automotive vehicles. We can understand that, but then we can take it a step further and see what make and model are they looking for? Is there a certain thing that really matches the inventory you have available for the people that are out there? So like we're kind of talking about, the market is very interesting right now, and kind of we need to be very smart and strategic with it. And you can spend your dollars very effectively by being smart with these custom audience approaches. So performance monitoring and support. Several dealers that we've worked with in the past or just have consulted on in different capacities have really worked with someone who just maybe emails a report. And that's fine, right? That's good accountability that you kind of see what's going on. But again, since this market is so critical right now, we want to make sure that we're looking at what is performing and how to shift dollars and make strategic moves accordingly. So I know, you want to make sure that you're looking at what has happened in the past month, look at it on a monthly basis, but instead of, focusing too much on the past, you want to think about what can those learnings do to help move you forward. So how can we take what's happening last month and make us really move in the right direction on our next month? So you can look at what audiences are responding, what geographies are, or what geographies aren't, right? You can kind of shift those dollars in a really smart way, but also allowing yourself the time, right? Just because digital is quick and accessible and you can see what's happening in real time, that's all cool and exciting, but you don't want to make any fast moves. You want to make sure that you are giving yourself that time to collect enough data to make smart decisions. But that, again, that's just going to help you kind of shift dollars and measure results properly. The other thing to think about, I've just seen this happen where you kind of look at all things as one. So, the branding campaign, the top of funnel type of marketing, you don't want to measure that success the same way you're going to measure your search campaign or a retargeting campaign, right? Those are very low funnel. They're going to very much drive results. They're going to be very quick to see a higher performance than the branding piece. So make sure that you have different goals and measurements lined up properly with how you're using each platform. And again, all of that is really partly in conjunction with the fact that there's just less co-op support. It's just the nature of where we're at today. But I think it makes it even more critical for you to be very, very stringent and very clear on your goals, breaking up those funnel segments like I described, and just being smart with your dollars. And then just a final thing, if you're, most dealers are working with an agency of some capacity. And so it's really important, what we've run across, things that we found that are just really good to dig into, no matter who you're working with. One, what are your reporting methods? I just went through reporting and measurement and trying to get ROI together, but looking at what that is, so maybe you're vetting new vendors, because if you are working with someone, you probably know what their reporting methods look like, but trying to understand, like, what does that look like? How often are we going to engage and kind of assess the situation? And then how do you reach the target audience? So what are they doing with that data, right? The CRM list, how are they helping you with that? How are they helping you be really smart with setting up a strong retargeting campaign? So one thing I didn't mention with retargeting, you don't want to just put the retargeting pixel on your homepage and say you're doing retargeting. You want to be very, very smart and set up an actual retargeting funnel within your site and adjust your bids based on where they are, right? So you want to bid more for a retargeting ad, somebody who's on a product description page versus somebody who is, just came to your homepage and bounced. So being really smart there is going to be important. So again, those are really good questions. Yes, your agency might be doing retargeting, but are they putting in the frequency and recency and adjusting bids based on your website's funnel? And then finally, do you have a research department? So it's really wonderful. Yes, all of the data that I mentioned, like tapping into Experian and looking at your CRM data, that liquid gold, but a step further outside of just your business intelligence and also looking at just what is the market doing? And a research department is going to allow you to kind of dig further and see, yes, you might have an idea that your target audience might be women, 25 to 45, and they have one child. Okay, great. But how many of those people exist in the marketplace, or what else are they interested in? So you can tap in a little bit further when you have a research department to give you more insights into your audience. So anyway, those are just 3 of the questions that we've seen be really, really successful. Awesome. So those are the main tips and tricks that we have. So again, thank you guys so much for joining. Very much appreciate your time and attention. But now we're going to go through some Q&As. So I will turn it back over to Skylar and we'll go from there.
Great. Now let's start the Q&A session. A reminder for the audience, please continue to enter your questions into the Q&A panel. So our first one here says, you mentioned asking vendors about research. How are you applying research to campaign strategies?
Yeah, good question. So one of the ways that we've done it, and it's been really helpful. So I mentioned a lot of our dealerships have been tapping into the power of connected TV. And so one of the ways that we've used our research department is to look at the geographies. So the primary and secondary markets, and we're seeing, okay, how many people in that marketplace are streaming connected TV, and what do those households look like? What are the personas of those people? So again, like getting really smart, and then we're applying that information into our audience purchases within the connected TV space or programmatic, right? So that's obviously can apply to anything from programmatically speaking, but that's really the biggest way that we're kind of applying our research and making that help us make smarter decisions and be more strategic with the dollars that we're purchasing within the programmatic space. So that's a great question. Thank you.
Our next one here says, are there any tools that weren't covered that could help with the user experience?
I can take that one, Lindsay, I think. As a product marketing manager, I'm kind of always looking at what products can we offer to our clients that might be useful for them, that might help them. And I know that I had mentioned just a little bit earlier on about integrating your vehicle feed into as many platforms as you can. Just getting that inventory out in front of people when they're out online, maybe not necessarily on your website or somewhere else, but ways that you can make sure that those that your inventory is in front of people in all kinds of different places where they are online. And one of the really kind of more new things that I've seen and that we're starting to offer is most dealerships already have a Google business profile. Most businesses do. And if you don't, that's something that I would definitely recommend. Make sure you have a Google business profile set up and that you keep it up to date with your hours and your current requirements and things. That goes back to talking about making sure people know what the expectations are at your dealership. That's a great place to make sure that they know if you have masking requirements or whatever, keep that profile up to date. But Google is now offering an integration that does a direct integration into your profile with a button that is just for cars. So when you're looking at a profile, you click cars, they can actually see your VDPs right there. They're all integrated right into Google results so that people can have that. And there's also a chat component that can be integrated also right into your Google business profile. So that is something that I would recommend taking a look at integrating if you have the ability to do that for sure.
Let's see. So we got a question here. It says, how can dealers verify the end customer when conducting business digitally? Identity theft and verification is tricky enough when the person is in the store and now they're not.
Yeah, that is for sure. So it can be a little tricky. I mean, if you have a form on your website, if somebody tries to request a quote or something like that, obviously that matchback makes it very simple. One of the ways, I know we've done it in the past, we can get pretty clear on the people who have viewed a specific VDP based on, or VIN number, I'm sorry, a specific VIN through, our display channels or whatever that we're running. And so if that's sold, it's hard for us to match it to an exact person, but it at least helps with the attribution. So I don't know if that's answering your question. I'm kind of thinking of it more in the context of you delivered ads and this is obviously giving you your results. So we've been able to kind of match and solve for that piece. But as far as getting the names and all of that privacy, it's just become so strict that it is, I'm not aware specifically of any other ways of doing that at the moment, but obviously we can, get back to you if there is something that I'm missing, or Sheri, I don't know if you know of some other way.
Yeah, I don't have it. It's becoming more difficult with the, digital privacy, trying to make sure that people aren't, explicitly being identified in like marketing efforts. And so it is a little bit harder to do that piece of things.
That appears to be all the questions we have for now, but we'll give another moment to see if we have any follow-ups.
Perfect. Thank you. And in the meantime, just while we're waiting, we do have a white paper also that we'll share eventually with you all that just kind of talks through with some of our experts. So Thad was one of the people that were interviewed, as well as another gentleman, Joe Wilkie, really, really strong players in the automotive space. So I think there's a lot of takeaways and learnings there. So we'll make sure you guys have access to that as well.
Another question here that says, expand on hybrid interaction. How can a dealer explain this to employees?
Sure. Well, I can take that a little. I think I had mentioned a hybrid interaction, which is really what I meant by that was that you have part of your process is happening online, and then part of your process is happening in person. I know for myself, the last time that I had a purchasing situation at a car dealership was last year. So we did do like all of our paperwork and everything like that happened online. So we were able to do the majority of our research, the majority of our paperwork to complete the transaction through digital. But then there was still a component of getting the paperwork and stuff signed that we had to do physically, and then going in and picking up the vehicle. We did that in person. So a hybrid interaction, combining both of those things together. And so I think explaining it to employees would be that, if they can keep in mind that as much of the process can be done digitally in advance, I would recommend doing that. And then when the person does come in, to make sure that you have all of the pieces. So if it's paperwork that needs to be signed, that all of those papers are printed and ready, and you have signed tabs and clean pens and the whole, preparing for that in-person interaction ahead of time to make it quick, to make it seamless, as much as you can possibly do to make those hybrid interactions a positive experience.
Another question here says, how can this apply to variable ops and fixed ops?
I don't know if I understand. I mean, I don't know. Maybe you understand, Sheri, but I'm not really. Can you explain what you mean by the variable ops and fixed ops?
Yeah, I'm not sure what that means either.
All right, we'll give one moment to see if they give any clarification. Variable is sales, fixed is service.
Okay. And so that's sort of relating back to a hybrid interaction. I think you mean the applying to variable ops as in a sales. We kind of just talked about that in trying to transition as much of the paperwork or any other of the, maybe it might be the vehicle tour, new vehicle, go through to a video option or something like that. For service, I would say, again, probably the same would apply for the most part. If there are ways that you can do, any paperwork, any scheduling, all of the kinds of things that you might have to do, that kind of naturally transition into the digital space, making sure that as much of that that can be pushed into the digital space to minimize the time required in person, I would recommend doing that. And then just, again, it comes back to communication. I would say that communicating that to the client, what to expect, what the options are for them, what their expectations are, and then making sure everybody at your dealership is also like well informed about those processes so that they can make sure that when they're interacting with your customers that they're, you know, doing whatever digital options they can do, streamlining the process and clearly communicating with your customers throughout the process, whether it's for sales or for service.
All right, fantastic. That appears to be all the questions that we have for now. Do y'all have any closing comments before we conclude today's webinar?
Yep. So just again, I thank you all for the time. We do have links to our website. So if you have any other questions or want to connect with Sheri or I, or again, Thad at some point, you know, feel free, just reach out to the info@adtaxi.com. We're very, very happy to help you. And if there isn't something we explained well, please reach out. You know, obviously we're here for you guys. So want to be able to give you as much information as possible. But yeah, thank you again so much, and I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you so much for attending today's webinar, and thank you to Lindsay and Sheri for the great presentation. To view this webinar on demand and future Digital Dealer webinars, please visit digitaldealer.com/webinars. Once again, thank you and have a great day.
Thanks.